Good afternoon. This is Roger Hitchcock, and welcome to our next in the series, Navigating the Blizzard. We trust that everybody's well, that everybody's having a good time and settling into what is becoming an interesting new way of doing work, an interesting new way of living, and just some really interesting questions that are going around. I think that we've reached the point we're now going into kind of the second full week of lockdown here in South Africa. I know that many countries have been in for a little bit longer and some have gone in more recently, but I do think that this is probably the week that things are going to get serious. I know in my conversations with my family and colleagues, it's really been an interesting, the big questions are starting to emerge, and I think that focuses attention on just not only on what we're doing now, but what we're going to do into the future. And so today we want to pick up on our conversation, which has been going on. And the topic of today is de-risk your business through COVID-19 crisis with exponential principles. And in a few minutes time, we're going to be in conversation today with Loic Potjes, and he's from a company called Disruptive Leap. Loic, do you want to just quickly say hi? And then just to check that we're all online.
Hi everyone, thank you.
Hi there. You'll hear Loic's voice quite a bit, and I'll give him a chance to also touch sides, and he's going to lead us through some interesting thinking. But as we go, let me just introduce once again, what are we aiming to do through this Navigating the Blizzard series of webinars, and these are working webinars. The idea is that you ask questions, and I think today's session will be one where I do encourage you as we go through and as we listen to Loic, and he's been, he'll introduce his experience in a few minutes, but he's been really instrumental in helping companies and does help companies really think through what's out there. And that's the point, is we want to help you determine the next steps in your business. And some of us have spent the last week really, trying to get everything in place internally. And I think the focus is going to be, to some extent, to think and to look externally. But we need to think about the decisions we need to take, because decision making is a critical governance responsibility. And the focus in this whole crisis is on the decisions that we have made, because we're seeing the results of some of the decisions we have made, but also the future is going to be based on the decisions we make at this time. Because we believe that the companies and the businesses and the boards and directors and leaders in companies that think things through, make the right decisions, take the right actions, are going to be better positioned to see this thing through. We've called it Navigating the Blizzard, as I've touched on before, because we do believe fundamentally that this is a through thing. It's certainly going to leave things significantly changed, and I think we're starting to see some of the anticipation about things that will be changed forever, but also some things will not be changed that much, and we will go back to some things, but we need to discern the two. And I think this quote that I came across, I think sums up part of the conversation that we're going to have today with Loic. The things we fear most in organizations, the fluctuations, disturbances, imbalances, are the primary sources of creativity. And what we've covered so far to lay the foundations is we have looked at things like, how do we engage with our stakeholders? We've looked at unpacking and starting to identify some of the risk issues, and how do we map out both stakeholders and risks in our businesses. We've thought about strategy, and we're going to pick up on that, I think, today with Loic. But what do we have to think about process-wise in our decision-making and in some of the systems? And we've mainly been looking at this stage, just the nature of where we've been in the first couple of weeks of this crisis. We've mainly been looking at saying, well, what do we need to take into account internally? And now it's an opportunity for us to think about the outside. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Loic. He's been involved in, and Loic, if you wouldn't mind, just I'm going to stop my share. If you can pick up on sharing your screen while I give a bit of a introduction to Loic. He's highly educated, been through schools of management, GIBS. He's got extensive experience, not just in South Africa, but across the continent. I know that he does sit as a director on some of the Sirdar boards and has added immense value there. He's been involved not just in helping companies handle the crazy times we're going through, but also make changes, mergers and acquisitions, those kind of things. Disruptive Leap, his business is an advisory and investment boutique firm, and it helps or specializes in getting companies, to maximize their growth, and also, I suppose, at this time, set themselves up for growth into the future. So with that in mind, Loic, over to you.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you everyone for making the time, and welcome to the call. So today the point is really to look about what we haven't done as yet. So you guys have probably looked at your cash flows, see about when you would run out of cash, managed your supply chains, you've organized your employees to work from home. So essentially, I would say that you've probably looked at everything you could do in the short term inside of your business to manage everything you could to extend your runway. So we're going to talk about absolutely none of that today. The only thing we want to be thinking of is what you should be doing that you haven't done outside your business to guarantee the, let's assume you might have, just picking a number, 3 months of cash. In the window between 3 and 18 months, what you should be doing in what I call the exponential space. And the exponential space is really what people talk about the future of your business. What should you leverage? What should you go and do outside of your current business model? If we talk of your current business model, 99% of the thinking that I've seen around goes on, shall I do just more of the same? And how do I extend my lifeline, and so on and so forth. But essentially, you haven't touched, most of you haven't touched your business model. And what I intend to do, and what I hope to be doing with Sirdar, with the Sirdar team, with Roger here today, what we'd like to achieve for you is lifting the veil beyond your current business model with some sense of immediacy to give you a practical methodology and crafting a bit of a case, so sharing a few practical cases on how could you actually seize a number of opportunities that might extend your lifeline in the short term and might position you in a substantially better way once the crisis is over. And we hope to finalize the call with a few immediate steps for action. To Roger's point, it's not just about the structured conversations, but it's about giving you tools, giving you practical things that you could use. So in the first part, I'll go through a little bit of the do's and don'ts and lift the veil on businesses of the future with practical examples. Then I'm gonna give you the sequential methodology, and thereafter we'll have a bit of a more interactive into what does it talk to in terms of your industry. Where could you start? What could initiatives look like for your business, and so on. So without further ado, let me jump in.
Loic, can I just mention one thing at this point in time, and thanks for that intro. So what will be helpful for those people online, if you wouldn't mind just dropping the industry of your business, the industry your business is in, into the chat box, and then as we go and as we start to get, especially thinking about your specific businesses, just so that Loic can have some idea, and then I'll pick up on some of those. And please use the Q&As as we go. So just as Loic said, we want to get as customized as possible. So please drop those in as we go, and we'll pick up on some of those in a few minutes. Over to you, Loic.
Thank you, Roger. So yeah, if you can put your industry, then we'll try to tailor-make a few initiatives, thoughts, and cases that are hopefully a bit closer to home for you. So just a few thoughts. So first, this is a crisis moment, nothing new. We all are aware of it. The problem with that is that 90% of organizations, if not rethought, or whatever the exact percentage is, there's a fair chance you might not be in business post-crisis. I'm not sure it's going to be going on for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months. We're unsure currently of our future. Then it obviously begs the call for action, right? And so the key point I want to make is that probably if we look at the 80-20 rule, is that I want to touch on the hidden face of the iceberg, because everything you've done this far is just giving you probably a bit more of bandwidth and buying you time. But essentially, there's 20% of stuff you should be doing that you're probably not doing that will achieve that 80% impact of de-risking your business. Not internally, not in the short term, but de-risking your business model and seizing these opportunities out there. And I haven't seen many webinars on just that. So the Kodak paradox is what I link about the definition of insanity by Einstein, which is something like it's doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. So whatever my industry is in, but if I keep doing more of the same with a twist in terms of managing suppliers and employees and so on and so forth, if I keep doing more of the same, I'm actually not in control of the future of my company, right? And so that's what we are trying to do here. So de-risking is truly about not just the should I take risks, because the biggest risk is probably not to do much outside my current business model now. That's probably your biggest risk. And the great opportunity is then we've got nothing to lose as yet. And back to the 80-20 principle, we're looking for two concepts, speed and time. We need stuff that's like as much plug and playable as possible that we can immediately start with. And we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for the perfect service line product that we need to get out on the market. We're looking for survival and achieving an 80-20 for an acceptable risk and reward balance. Now, with that, I just want to jump into a few do's and don'ts and a few key concepts of the exponential space. The purpose of that is to shift your mindset very quickly outside of the next year we'll do 10% more of the same, or whatever the traditional business paradigm is. And so first, which space are we playing in? And in the strategic framework of exponential, we're looking at the third horizon. And horizon one is more about what we would call the fix. It's getting your basics right. Yeah. Horizon two is the optimization. Now, 99% of innovation or disruption happens in this quadrant. It's a bank that's going to say, instead of queuing for an hour, we'll have an app that allows you to do something at home instead of signing a large number of forms after queuing for an hour. That talks to minimizing your costs. That talks about a better user experience and about customer retention. But essentially, the point is essentially it's the same business model. And maybe if you're an airline right now, it's trying to think of the future of planes is maybe not the right thing to do. But we're looking in the disruption space, like what is the stuff that is still close to home in terms of your core skills and capabilities, and I'll get to that now, but that you could immediately leverage to do maybe something different than you're currently doing now.
Yeah, look, like just a couple of things. Maybe go back to that fix, optimize, disrupt slide, because I think it's a really valuable one. And just thinking in terms of some of the people we've got on the call, so some of those sectors and things to talk into. We've got someone from marketing and media. We've got someone from glass packaging. Some of the glass packaging and furnace, and also some agriculture, coffee growing and tea making. So quite an interesting range. There's a men's grooming salon. And then there's some, you know, some online financial trading and investing, and then general legal compliance. And one other one is just popped on, waste management. So in any of those that jump up in terms of examples of how you've seen or how one would think about these three horizons. And I agree with you, we've spent a bit of time focusing on the fix, and I quite like the concept of building some bandwidth or runway and thinking about that. So with some of those in mind, any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. And if we're going to do, and let me try to see if I can quickly move to the next concepts. And just to share a short video, and just hopefully the sound will work, but let me see what you think.
Our mission is to do a pit stop in 20 seconds. In zero gravity.
So I hope you were able to see that. And the first
we were able to see that. Thanks, Loic. Go.
First concept is a new lens and a new way to look at your space, right? And when we look at your space immediately, and when I say your space, I use the word space and not industry, because industries are being redesigned. We're seeing immediately the emergence of a few opportunities, right? For example, in China, when the whole country was, the whole industries were locked down, we saw that online entertainment, as everyone was getting bored at home, started booming. Everyone wanted to play a game after being bored with work and being bored with taking care of the kids, right? Now, supply chains are being redefined within local boundaries. Now, you've got millions and millions of skilled workforce sitting at home, being awfully bored, not sure of having jobs tomorrow, and available. And if you look at platforms through which you can connect them through, you've got extraordinary skills available on demand. Shifting of mindsets, like I'm in a consulting and investment business. Well, people still, like 2 weeks ago, wanted to have workshops face-to-face in a conference room with our team. But now, post-crisis and post-management of crisis, people are thinking of, well, it's quite okay to have workshops and strategy workshops on webinars. And all of a sudden, it opens a new number of geographical boundaries for me, which is extraordinary. So that shifting of mindsets, there's never been such an extraordinary C-suite exit. If you've got the solution for a CEO that might give him a couple of months or weeks of more bandwidth to survive as a business, well, you will never have had such an access. And so when we talk to that, I want to stop on two concepts: your space and your core skills and capabilities, and the new lens. Let's talk about your industries. Let's say packaging. And if we think of packaging, you're thinking of manufacturing plants and warehousing and all of that. And we think within those walls, how long can I pay my workers? How many? But hang on, your core skills and capabilities. Maybe you've done smart manufacturing. Okay, so it might beg the question of maybe there's some IoT that you've applied to do predictive maintenance and to do so what's the stuff that you've applied to yourself that constitute a skill that might actually, and that you've used internally, but that now you might leverage externally in other geographical spaces that might not be constrained? And why not doing consulting work for Latin America or Asia if they're less, or if Asia starts booming again and China is reopened for business? What are the core capabilities and skills outside of your bricks and mortars that you could apply to other guys? Where could you gain immediate access to start making income generating services out of what you've applied of your own little secret recipe. In terms of media, now, if you're into billboards, for example, well, if there's nobody on the streets currently, that's not going to be very much of a help. But if you're on media that are based on a screen, or if you use those channels, you've got hundreds of millions of people sitting bored at home, and after looking after the few emails and taking care of the kids, what are they going to do? They're going to spend hours on social media. They're going to want to do online gaming. They're going to look for entertainment online. So those are the channels that will boom. Now, one example there is, for example, we've negotiated in a new venture a contract with probably the largest media channel in South Africa to take their unsold media inventory every year, those spots that nobody will buy and that available inventory, and to invest with that at no fee, those radio slots, whatever they may be, TV slots, whatever, to invest at no fee in exchange for an upside. Now let's take just 99% of companies out there that are stuck between two places, that need to sell, or as soon as business reopens, that need to sell the products and services, that therefore need advertising, that don't have the cash anymore to buy those channels, and then therefore they don't get the sales. So the chicken and egg, right? If you came with new models of, we'll put the media at no cost available, but in exchange for an upside, be it on a gross profit base of the newly acquired customers or whatever. So what are the new ways to look at media? In terms of salons and hair grooming or whatever. So are you into a brick and mortar business where you expect people to walk in, or do you provide experiences? Now, experiences could be different. Like, I'll take the analogy of a mate of mine that has a restaurant. Now, with brick and mortar, you've got constraints, like in her capacity. So she's got a capacity for, I don't know, 50 people, 50 bums on seat, lunch and evening. So that's the limitation. And if she wants double that, then she needs another restaurant. Now, how about what can she leverage? Because if she doesn't provide food, but experiences, what are millions of people sitting at home? What do they want to experience? You could reach out to 100 more restaurants, and you each do a seminar, and you leverage your own database. What are the immediate skills and capabilities? You've got a following on Facebook, on what you've got a customer database. You leverage that by a cooking class live that you sell at a ridiculous fee of $9 a pop or whatever it may be, or even $2. But now all of a sudden, with the enabling platforms, you could have 1 million people live on your platforms. Now you're less geographically constrained. How about an Upwork, a freelancer.com, where you get influencers to sell you that in exchange for 10% of the fees? And who are the people that can get you in millions of audiences very quickly? And how unconstrained could your business look like with a sense of immediacy, leveraging these social media platforms into giving experiences to the millions, right?
Yeah. Loic, maybe just the question is as well on that core skills and capabilities is, how do you think we should be going about, in a sense, auditing our own set of skills or capabilities? Are there any tools, any thinking we can use to really get from our teams, and obviously the capability of the business, but any thoughts around that, how we actually identify some things which may not have been obvious?
So you could ask others, because often, so a good way is to ask your partners, some colleagues, some people outside of your space and your industry. Like, for example, I'm asking the same question to one of the largest mining houses groups in South Africa. And the guy's answer is, the CEO's answer is, well, what do you mean, core capabilities? Or, well, we're a mining house, we do mining, right? What a stupid question. And I'm saying, well, hang on, mining is about engineering. So now engineering is broader than mining. That's a capability. Then the hidden capabilities. You guys are rural, so Maybe you're off the grid somewhere. So maybe you've had to do solar. Well, yes, we have. It's not our core business, but hang on a minute. You've had to do solar off the grid for a couple of decades. You've got teams that are, so that's a core capabilities. Could that be then spin off? How do I understand my space? How about the ability to work and to reach out to local communities? Now, Silicon Valley boys don't have that to understand the bottom of the pyramid in Africa. A mining house has been forced to work with local communities. So your question is great, Roger. It's like, how do I relook at myself and the best tool for that, to keep it super simple, don't do it yourself. Ask people outside of your industry to list what they think your core skills and capabilities should be, and you might come with surprising new, fresh answers. Actually,
yeah, maybe that's a way just to bridge it back to one thing we've spoken about before, is thinking about the core stakeholder relationships we have. Is maybe we can offer to do that with a few partners and say, let's get together, because maybe we can unlock new things together, and that's a great conversation to have. So yeah, good.
And again, the other question would be then, how do you redefine your space? And once again, forget about brick and mortar. If you're a salon, if you are, or if you're trading online and you have some bespoke software or something. So, like, for example, in a tire business, so distribution, right, in East Africa, the guys were mentioning, well, we have warehousing, we have a import, export of, and we distribute point of sale and all of that for tires. I said, but hang on, what about data? What about, so they're sitting on 40% of the customer database of the fleets of trucks and buses in the country. Now that's an asset. So how do you relist your asset? What you can reach out to? An asset can be credibility. If you've built an enormously strong brand on something, then you've got credibility. Now, how can that be leveraged?
Yeah.
And yeah, just a couple of examples there. And then with that, once you've listed that, you look for the gorilla in the room. As in, okay, let me take an insurance business, like I'm talking to the CEO of one of the largest global insurance business and the CEO for Africa. And the right question to identify the gorilla in the room, and I want to get to that just now, with the concept of reverse thinking. And reverse thinking is basically, you should ask yourself, how much time and cash do I have? Have I got 3 months? Have I got 6 months? And so to survive for the next 18 months, how much cash do I actually need? And it'll tell you like a KPI or a criteria into what kind of income generating activity do I need to give me life as a business. So like, do I need $1 million a month? Do I need more? Do I need less? Okay. So go back to the gorilla in the room. It's that activity, like back to the packaging, for example, where you'd say, we've got a secret sauce where we could start consulting. And so therefore we need if we then set up an IoT smart packaging into some parts of Asia where it might not have penetrated, we think the gain would be $1 million per month per plant, for argument's sake, or 100,000. So then we need X plants, and we need, so it kind of clarifies your activity, and the gorilla in the room is the simple question of, where is there some level of need or inefficiency that if I do cater for it, is it one, close to my core skills and capabilities, and is it close to my spaces? So in other words, can I plug and play tomorrow?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe a question coming out of that, I mean, you've been through some really, really interesting things, and just to get really practical. So you had your core skills and capabilities, and then obviously you're referring to some of the trends out there in the marketplace and what's happening in the world. And obviously those trends there are some things that are brand new that are happening. I mean, where would you suggest we look? Because I think one of the key things with decision makers is we need to know what to look for and what to look at and what to watch. So how would you recommend kind of observing and identifying the key trends in the marketplace and some of the standard technology people, but in the light of our capabilities and skills? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's the concept of the needle in the haystack, right? Some people are asking me, how do you stay current on all things disruptive? And I said, simple, I don't. It changes every day. But when I know, for example, that in the waste management space, my biggest asset would be, so it's to keep it absolutely not theoretical and extraordinarily practical. So if I've got now a fleet of trucks in the waste management space and some processing space okay, so those are some of my assets. What can I use my trucks? So how can I get immediate income on my trucks in the next 3 months? So maybe it's by distributing food or groceries, or what do people use trucks now for? So it needs to be one of the essentials business, right? Otherwise the trucks can't go out. So how do I lease in the short term? So all of a sudden it becomes highly practical.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of examples I've seen, interestingly enough, in this whole thing, about 10 days ago, there was a hotel owner in the UK who obviously was anticipating that he wouldn't have any business for the next 3 months. And instead of just closing down and putting his people off, he said, how do I protect my people? And he went to the hospitals in the area and he offered for the hospitals to put their people who were now, essential services, but potentially not wanting to go home to their families because they could be infected, into his hotels, and it meant he could keep his staff occupied and busy. And so those are some of the ways is to look at things in different ways. I saw another article about an airline pilot who's actually started to drive for a delivery company. Not necessarily it's the same skill, but thinking, well, I do transport things, so I transport people. So really putting those together. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I was talking to a large real estate, like a C for Palm Golding or one of those, right? And we came to the conclusion that the core assets was that in East Africa, they've got 41 highly clever, capable property brokers. And whilst no one may be allowed to go and visit around properties and so on in the high market space, but are they providing like living places, or are they providing living experiences? And so we've set up an innovation game into saying, well, we've defined that each broker, we've been very concrete. We said each broker needs to bring in $10,000 a month of revenue, right? And then they would actually make more money than they would have had in the end. And to just keep the lights on in the business, each broker would need to bring $2,500 a month of new revenue. And what that like mid-sized outfit in East Africa could keep going, right? So that's setting the KPI. That's setting that the core assets isn't anymore the list of properties, because you can't do much with those. So, but we've said we've got knowledgeable, intelligent people, and they're sitting on a contact database of 40,000 high-end individuals in that kind of highly residential suburbs in that side of the world. So now they've organized shared experiences and traveling online, visiting museums and so on with guides. They've got a flurry of income, and they've started making more money than they do in there, but they've stopped thinking about we're here to rent houses. The core assets were then these connected people that could reach out personally to 40,000 people, and something new has come out of that.
Yeah, good. Carry on. I think that's the kind of thinking we're trying to inspire here. Is it's something new. Over to you, Loic.
Absolutely. So next question is, so next concept is the offer you can't refuse. I'll take simply an Uber, for example, an Uber versus a taxi. If you offer clearly more convenience at a lesser price, it's what is the compelling value proposition that's hard to say no to. because that's extraordinarily important. Because if you don't have the time for long sales cycles, then it's got to be compelling. Like back to that, like trading online, for example. If you're sitting on a software, we were in a software company and they've got 700, it's a half software, half manual process. So brick and mortar, rigid processes, 700 bums on seats, and which they can't do much with in the current circumstances. But we've said, look, there's a pearl in this thing, that there's a new version of software that's substantially more automated. And with that, they can do the discovery expansion model. So what do I mean by that? So when Discovery went to China, they thought you've got two options, right? You can say either I need 100,000 bums on seats and to go take the local guys at their own game and to be competitive and so on. And they would have taken 10 years to get there and lots of money. But instead of that, if the secret sauce is that by influencing behavior, they have a special piece of code that will make people behave in a certain way, in a more healthy way, and then therefore that brings down the claims, and therefore they can reshare some of that back in a lower premium. That's an enabler. Now, they've gone to the guys in China that have maybe 100 million people on their books and they can reach out immediately to them, and they've said, no, look, if you use our piece of code, you can extract X% more margin. And we'll give you the plug and play. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you give us the plug and play of the access to the market of the 100 million. So in that software business that was in the unit trust enabling of the red tape behind the scenes space in South Africa, we've said, no, but you've got essentially a couple of markets you could go to. So what if you went immediately? So, and you're looking for the similar regulatory environments. And then that the software is already designed to so again, speed, plug and play. And we've looked at the UK and New Zealand and Sri Lanka and a couple of other places. And if they go fast access to market, leveraging just that, now all of a sudden, they've got a new line of service that's possible with the offer that no one can refuse. It's like, it's like the concept also of, oh, pay me $1 million for my software. Okay, that's a hard decision. But it's to say, each customer of yours that that takes on this system on board, you make, I don't know, $10. And so you've got a GP, a gross profit of $7. So $2 is mine, 5 is yours. Boom, it's hard to say no. It's additional margin, right? So the offer you can't refuse. And it talks to removing the price ceiling, right? If you give more of the same, like if I give you a haircut, how much is your haircut? If I give you a piece of packaging, how much is that? It's breaking the good old law of supply and demand, the offer no one can refuse. We've spoken about the reverse thinking, but now it talks also to not keeping it inside the fortress. Because now all of a sudden I want to have that new piece of software. I need to control the, so it's the small pie mentality. Because if next year in traditional business model, I can only grow 10%, then I want to control as much as the pie as I can, right? But if it's about 10xing the pie extraordinarily rapidly, then it creates the abundance mentality. And back to the plug and play. Who do I need to partner with in the ecosystem very rapidly to plug and play and to create 100 times the size of the pie, right?
Yeah. I think Loic, just a comment from me, and I think that slide of the ecosystem is a really important one, because the strength of our relationships through this crisis is going to be the thing that gets lots of us through. It's not seeing our business on its own. I like that, keeping it in the fortress, but it's actually strengthening. And I suppose the question to ask is, how does one think about all of the parties you're connected with a view to understanding where the value lies in the ecosystem? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. So it gets back to the methodology, and I'll summarize that in just a sec, because I'm conscious of time, and we want to give you guys as much interaction time as we can. So let me move fairly fast. Reverse thinking we've thought of, the pricing we've thought, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction now. The scaling levers. Scaling lever is who gives you access to market super fast. So if you want to give a lifestyle experience outside of your salons. And it's those influencer marketings that have access to 20 million people plus in the US. And that's a scaling lever. It's that China insurance player that has 100 million people on their books. If they give you access there, then immediately it's the scaling lever, because you don't have the time to go traditionally penetrating markets. Now, back to another 80-20 rule, it's solving 80% of a problem at 20% of the cost, or flowing with the good enough that gives you the offer no one can refuse. And I just want to kind of summarize at this stage where we're at, to back to Roger's question, actually, where do we start? How does that look like? And I just want to, hopefully we want to leave you with a few simple steps, right? Redefining your space, new pair of lens, see broader than just brick and walls, or geographical spaces, because all of a sudden the whole world is open. Link that, define your core capabilities and skills, again with a new lens. Ask your 12-year-old boy what he thinks the space you're playing with. You'll be surprised at, and then extract the hidden skills and capabilities, as in the solar or working with local communities in Africa, in the mining example. And with that, with these two things, you're going to look for your needle in the haystack. Like, who might need a predictive maintenance in a packaging environment? Like, is it only good for packaging, or is it just any manufacturing environment? So now we're broader, and we can apply some of those IP and methodology outside. And so it begs the simple question of what markets keep operating or are going to reopen first. Is it China? Is it Asia? Right? And all of a sudden, you've got a geographical boundary, you've got the skills, you've got consulting services as the way you can leverage that, and you found your needle, right? Script a solution, like, how are you going to make that an offer no one can refuse? If you say, no, you've got to buy $1 million worth of big consulting project, and then we'll tell you if we can help you, that's a bit of a hard one. But if you say, we've got something that's immediately implementable with a few sensors, or in the trading online space, we've got a piece of software which you can use to leverage your existing customer bases, and we believe you can extract immediately 10% more margin there, well, and will only take a success fee, then it's hard to say no to. So script the solution, as in who would pay what for, and how do you make it compelling? The 80-20 test, like, can I make it compelling? Am I still making money? Do they make money? So therefore, what's the likelihood of this taking some sort of a snowball effect? Yeah, and therefore it will define which ecosystem you want. So you're looking for a guy, so like in the trading online, you're looking for a similar regulatory environment, and the top 5 players in that space in a list of countries that are in the spaces of trading online, well, that are by definition unrestricted, that people can keep doing at home. Or you're looking at maybe the low-hanging fruit, which is all the guys that use not to trade online, but to have these vested, and that all of a sudden they're all forced at home, and the online part of it now seems like the right thing to do. And then you're looking for your scaling levers as defined, and then in one A4 page, you should have a bit of a plan to get started. And the name of the game is, don't do the usual thing that if you're in a large business, in a corporation, then you actually pretty much set up for failure, because what corporations like to do in their mindset is to agonize over 100 meetings and make sure you cross the T's. And so I'll take that example. I'm working with one of the global auditing firm, a tier 2, global 50 countries, 40,000 people, and audit. And we've agonized over 4 MVPs for now 18 months, like as in minimum value propositions to get to market. And we haven't asked as yet to one client. And now when I thought I could get these guys out of their risk committee meetings and let's test and launch that with a new customer. So they say, oh, but hang on, we're not sure. There's another guy, clever oak in the risk committee that said, no, we're not sure, we will have 10 more questions. And so essentially have come to the conclusion that they have no chance whatsoever of launching. Even though they might be sitting now on the Titanic, they're still debating the merits of going on a sailboat cruise. But because sitting on a Titanic, however sinking, is comfy because it's what we do for a living, right? And the perception of doing something new, we perceive it as risky, where it's completely counterintuitive. So the point is, jump in and start sailing, and you'll swallow a bit of water as is learning to swim. But the beauty of sitting on the Titanic, as we are all now in a crisis, is that we've got our backs against the wall, and so it reduces the reluctance to try something new. So the point is, get started quickly and repeat and flow. So that's really the thing, the step by step that I would suggest you do. And again, the point is, if you've ticked the boxes of your managing your cash flow, having your employees on the UIF or permanent disemployment or not, or you've managed your rental holidays, you've done but essentially you've spent 99% of your time, but none of that, if your business model is doomed to fail or will take too long and you're gonna run out of, none of that is going to extend to you long life, right? Sustainable life. So we're talking now about the 20% of things that you should be doing with a simple methodology to extract yourself beyond what you were doing in the day-to-day up to a few weeks ago, to recognize a new set of patterns of capabilities and skills, to recognize the new opportunities in the current crazy space, and to swiftly ride that wave. And you will fail a couple of times, you will not get it right, but what's the risk of not doing that and just keep looking inside of your walls and inside of your current business model? So I hope that's something that will.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Loic. I think just reflecting and if you've got any questions on the webinar, please put them in the question box. But just some words that I picked up that I think were really useful is it's looking from the inside out, and I think the inside has been absolutely necessary, and we've had to create stability and answer some questions. But I think some of the concepts we've been unpacking, and it links to what we've been trying to say in this webinar series, is it's about extending your runway or increasing your bandwidth. Use those as metaphors. And I think that's really what is such an important thing for directors and decision makers to be doing in this time, is to really find the time and make the time to think through things properly. Because the danger is, in a crisis, is we can shift to purely reactionary thinking. And what I think, Loic, you're trying to say is we need to be thinking as proactively as possible in order to do that. Any thoughts on that? Your last thoughts on that concept, and then I'll reflect on a couple of other things. But increasing your runway, extending your runway.
So extending your runway, again, you could have short term, it's like the couple of examples we took that what's plug and play there. So should I transform my warehouses into a field hospital for more people to, once the wave hits us, the waste trucks and so on, could that be used to deliver groceries? I don't know. The guys from the real estate industry were into, well, can we leverage or brokers to give shared experiences to people so how, because we usually think inside of our industry, and like we say, if my salon needs to be closed, then I'm stuck, or if my trading online, my current channels are all of a sudden disrupted. So how do I apply fresh thinking to leverage what I can immediately to extend my runway? So what are the channels of people who's been constrained in terms of trading that might see me as a saving grace in which part of the world, with which tools to provide a solution that I wasn't thinking about. So It's the concept of, and I talk of core skills and capabilities, and I talk to current spaces, and I talk to, because this concept of immediacy, what can be leveraged with immediate effect? Because as soon as you might have a number of bright ideas onto how the world should be reorganized and which spaces should you be playing in the future. But the reality is that you've got neither the cash nor the skills nor the energy to go and look for that now, as you're desperately trying to keep the lights on. So the immediate leveraging with the fresh thinking is
yeah. Another thought or sentence he used was amazing. I think it's for all of us to really think through is how do you create a compelling value proposition that cannot be said no to. And I think that's a real challenge, and it summed up your thinking around our capabilities, the trends in the marketplace, pricing. And I do think there is an opportunity to, in the current environment, to rethink a lot of the assumptions we've based our businesses upon. And even the concept of value is, what are people going to be valuing in this week, next month, 6 months' time, a year's time? The whole concept of value, I think, is also going to be shifting and changing. Your thoughts?
Yes, and I think at this stage, if you have a few specific questions, please, and we've got a very few minutes left, but if you've got any burning question, please feel free to post it on the chat box now. Also, from another perspective, after the call, do feel free to reach out to Sirdar if your board needs a bit of fresh thinking and so on and so forth. I'm sure, Roger, that you'll be able to assist with the team. Do also feel free to reach out to us if you've got any question left that you couldn't ask in the current webinar. We're available. Do feel free to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks very much for your time. Look, just one question: should one be looking to acquire another income stream, or look at focusing on the new opportunity? And I think that's one of the tensions. Is that the danger is there's a tension right now in terms of redesigning our own businesses and just simply creating other short-term streams. And I think there's balancing those two. How do you think of that question, Loic?
Yeah, I think it should be, there shouldn't be a tension. So I would want to start with one A4 page in front of me and a couple of timelines, like how much cash will so once I've renegotiated all my cash flows and got those rental holidays from my landlords, and all of a sudden now I've got some form of clarity on my cash flow for the coming time period, right? So now, I've got some time available with my management team. How much cash do I need to extend my lifeline? And then out of the current crisis, what are the immediate activities that are going to be cash providing in the very short term? And I should rank these, be it like when I say a new activity, it kind of almost shouldn't be like if my engineers have had to look at again the same example of predictive maintenance or smart manufacturing internally, that's a plug and play. It's do you see consulting as a new activity, or do you see, like as they've been troubleshooting your own factory, that they could do the same troubleshooting for someone else's factory? And what's the cost of their labor? How much is it worth to whom? And so it's applying. So if you apply the new lens, the simple criteria is immediate cash earning, because I think everyone is most of us are in that cash strapped position. If you're not, then that's great. Then you've got more time and peace of mind to go over your future, but probably you don't. And then it should be married in a simple and whatever internal or external new existing half new initiative you're taking, the simple criteria is, does it generate meaningful cash in the short term? And if yes, go for it.
Yeah, and it's obviously the balance, and I think that's one of the tensions, and it's probably one of the things I often focus on in decision making, is that we need our decisions to be clear and unambiguous at this time, because two things. One thing is it does set us off in a direction, and secondly, we can test the direction. And I think that's what you're saying as well, is as we think about these different horizons, it's not it's thinking with the three horizons in mind, as opposed to just abandoning one and thinking of the other. But often when we don't make decisions clearly and follow through on those decisions, we can't test whether the decision is right. All of our businesses right now are going through processes where we'll probably make a few missteps and a few mistakes as it changes. But as the process that Loic has taken us through is to really say, let's create enough options. How do we rethink value in our businesses? How do we rethink activities and capabilities? How do we reframe the way we do things and what we can actually do? And a phrase I've just written down here, and it's something that I've often used with with the companies and even with my my own children, is that none of us right now can do everything, but we can all do something. And I think that, Loic, is the process. And thanks for taking us through a valuable set of thinking tools that will help us identify, define, think through implications, and think differently. Any last comments, thoughts from you?
Yeah, with pleasure. It's normally something we unpack over 2 days with boards or with management teams. And it starts with a piece of learning that's a little bit more in depth than this. And then we do apply the methodology bit by bit. So if you feel you'd like your board or your management team to go on such a, let's say, a taste of webinar to feel that's something they would like, so I'm sure you could feel and reach out to Sirdar, or you could feel, so yeah, we're here to assist.
Yeah, thank you, and absolutely. If there's, please get a hold of us, and we'll pass you on to Loic. Just to remind you as well, what we're also doing as a result of this is we've been asked to unpack some of these concepts, and so we're packaging a lot of the material and some practical tools into a half-day online workshop. We call it Decision Making in Crisis: Navigating COVID-19, and the idea there would be to really be as practical as possible. So watch out for that. I know those messaging has gone out. We trust it's been valuable. Thank you so much for your time. Please keep an eye out. We are got other webinars coming up. There's one on Wednesday, and then we're going to pick up after Easter. Have an incredible week. I think this is the week, as I said, where things are going to get real. I think it's the time to press pause maybe for a short amount of time. Last week for many business people was incredibly busy, just trying to catch the balls that have been thrown in the air. Now we can almost try to find time to breathe. And I think the process that Loic has told us and taken us through is a great thinking journey to go on. In a minute or so, I'll close the webinar, and please complete the survey that comes up. Please also keep in touch with us. Please provide us with feedback on what you'd like to see us cover, big questions you've got in your own business. We really want these to remain practical working webinars. And one last thanks to Loic, and have a wonderful day further and week further, and wonderful Easter weekend. Thank you so much.